Hey, kia ora, Helen Browns here, coming live from Sun City in Arizona. Hope you all had a super fantastic, sparkling day. Wow, it has been an information overload day. I actually managed to get in 2 naps today just to get through today. I woke up a few minutes ago, so hang on, I need some water. Okay, right. What's been happening today? Oh, it's been a good day today. Woohoo! But first of all, welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast number 1142. And it has been information overload all day. But I have to tell you, this Summit of Excellence that I'm on with the Utah Genealogical Society is awesome. It is really good. Yesterday, we were back to basics, which was really cool. Today, we were getting lots and lots of new information. Now, the way they did it is they had 3 different topics today that you could follow all 5 classes. There was 5 classes for each class was an hour long and 15 minutes of Q&A, and then you had a 15-minute break, except after the second one we had an hour and a half for lunch, and then we went on to the next 3. But they had, like I said, anyway, they had 3 different training tracks, but you could pick and choose which classes. So each summit track had 5 classes in it, and you could pick and choose. You didn't have to go. You could stay and just do all of one track. You could go do one here, one there, one over there, because it's 3 different ones. We had methodology 101, and I sort of looked at that and went, okay, I am so methodologied out. Back in January, I did an entire 5 days of methodology on quoting sources and evidence and all of that sort of stuff. Then in July, and that was at the I don't remember which one that was at. That was one of the genealogy classes that go for a week. And then in July, I was at another one, and the track I was in was at, intermediate methodology, and that was a really cool class. And so I thought, I'm just going to stay away from methodology for just a little bit. The other 2 tracks were writing and storytelling, and the third one was European research. And so I looked at the different subjects and I thought, well, the only one in the European one I'm interested in is England resources, because that's where I do a lot of my research for my own family. I haven't had a need to do anything in Wales or Prussia or Italy or Scandinavia. And so I thought, well, let me start with, and I looked at the writing and storytelling one, and the very first topic was called From a Box in a Closet to a Treasured Family Heirloom. I thought, that sounds really cool. I thought, I wonder what that's about. It kind of sounds intriguing. I mean, they had titles that intrigued me. So that one was intriguing. So I got there. Oh my gosh, that was such a great class. The presenter there was telling us stories about how you can take things that have been passed down through generations that future generations may not want. Like one of the very first creative idea they came up with was like doilies. And doilies are things that you can put on furniture, you can put underneath things that are on furniture, and like little placemat type things for stuff that's like a vase or something that's sitting on a sideboard or something. And she says, my kids had no interest in doilies, so this is what we came up with. And they had turned doilies into like light shades. I'm like, that is so cool. And then they went through some of the other stuff that they had and about how they'd found all these letters and these different heirlooms and things, the furniture and that sort of thing. What can we do with them? And how they created the story of the ancestors and did videos with them, showing the stuff, making PowerPoints where they'd have a photograph of the item, and then they'd have the little story about the item, who it came from, how they were related, and all that. Oh, that is such a creative way to show a family history instead of just doing like a scrapbook. And yeah, you can do scrapbooks too, but there was also times where she had taken like letters and scrapbooks and things like that and had digitized them in a way that she was able to make videos out of them and PowerPoints and things. And it was just such a creative use of taking a box of stuff and creating it into something that people would be interested in. And I thought that was the creativity just blew my mind. And we're only on the first class of the day. Then our next class was publishing your family history. And I thought, okay, I need to know about this because we're working on the family history. I need to know how to publish it. But it took a different track than what I thought it would take because it was very much on here's some sites that you can go to self-publish. This is how you can self-publish them. And so it was all about resources resources on publishing your family history and, why you need to do it. Oh, yes. And many of you who have been following me in my podcast, my lives and in podcasts know that my biggest thing is tell your story, tell your story, tell your story, and why it's important. So I learned some stuff in that one on how to self-publish family history. And it can be like, you need a stack of books printed that you then want to be sold, how you can sell through the different bookstores and things, either online or physically, and that sort of stuff as well. So that was really good. That was a really good resource. Then our next one was breathing new life into boring ancestors. And I thought, this will be cool. And basically, if you take an ancestor, you've got the basic information, which is birth, marriage, death, and them appearing in a census, is basically the basics for in research and genealogy. Those are the basics. Where the information, where you take them from just being, oh, yep, they were born here, they appeared on these censuses here, oh, they got married on this one, and they got these kids here, and then they died. So now we take those, and by going through archives, now we had somebody who was an archivist and actually had a certification as an archivist. And I thought, I didn't even know that certification, but I'm going to have a look at that, not necessarily go after it, but have a look at it, because as she's talking, I'm like, that's really interesting work. And she was telling us about county archive, how, some counties have archives, some, there's county archives, there's state archives, there's town archives, city archives. Then you've got all your historical societies, your genealogy societies, universities, colleges, they all have these libraries that may have genealogical records in them and things like that. And all of a sudden, so she took this one person and had the basic information there and showed us the timeline, but then she started adding things into the timeline, and it was sort of like he bought some land. So that went into, this is where he bought the land, and here's the information about the land. And I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. But then the guy never went to school, but they found information about him in school records because he had done some work for the school and the school had paid him. So there was a receipt for that. I'm like, that's pretty cool. You may think school records they're just transcripts. Yeah, no. That was more than transcripts. Anything that took place at school, the school minutes, you could have ancestors that, even though they may not have attended the school, may be helping the school in some way, doing some work for the school or whatever, and they appear in the school minutes. And I'm like, okay, so now we're starting to get a little more about this person, and about how when you go into the archives, certain things to ask for that you can have a look at, because people don't, and I'm just like sitting there going, I didn't even know this stuff existed. Now, I have been to the National Archives in New Zealand, and that's where we found my second great grandfather's coroner's report about how his body was discovered a few months after he fell off a barge in a river, and how they identified him and that sort of thing. And so I knew about the coroner's reports being in archives. So I knew very little, but this one just sort of like, because people will drop off boxes of stuff to places that have archives, that can archive the information for them. And we're talking everything. You're talking photographs, you're talking journals, family Bibles, letters, scrapbooks, all sorts of things that people will put in a box and take down to the local archive, be it a county archive or a state archive or a college, a university, places where they have libraries, or to a genealogical or historical society, and say, here, archive this stuff. and going through these boxes and things, and I'm like, and then how they catalog them, like, and this woman, as soon as she said this statement, I knew we got someone who knows what she's talking about, because I talk about this a lot. And she said, out of all the genealogical records that are available in the world, of all the records available in the world, 5% or less are available online. And I've been saying that for years. I read that statistic some time ago, and she says it's 5% or less. She says, I'm thinking more that it's less than 5%, but she said it's definitely no more than 5%. And I'm like, okay. So I've got an archivist who's saying that no more than 5% of all the records available out there for genealogists are actually online, because I know that there's a lot. And so when you go into these archival places, there's a lot of stuff that they have that is not available online. And the only way to find it is to go to the archive and ask to see if they have anything like this, or to call them up or contact them online and all of it. So we're finding out all this wonderful information about archives, and I'm like, oh, I gotta get me. And she says she says very few times you actually have to be in person to be able to see the stuff. She says a lot of times you can do it over the phone, through social media groups, contacting the archive through their social media groups that they have, via email, picking up a phone and calling them. And she said she's done most of them. She says she's got some that she needs to go and actually go to physically see it, because nobody can go in there but her to see it, and it could be because of the copyrights on stuff as well. And so there's stuff that's not available online due to the copyrights of the information that's out there. And I'm like, didn't know about this stuff. This is really, and I'm just like, that was the first session after lunch. was like, and all of a sudden this information on this person that she was going through, where we had birth, marriage, death, and the census records all in the timeline, was suddenly getting padded out with all this other information that came from all these different resources. We had that he bought this land here, he did this, he did that, he worked this, he got paid for this, he got paid for that. Oh, here's a receipt of something that he purchased. And this particular person actually ran for office as well. And so the voting statistics were now into this person's record. So all of a sudden, this boring person now had a very interesting life, because through her research and on the archives and going after records that most people don't even know are there, she was able to find all this other information. And I'm like, that is so cool. So I'm just sort of like, okay, I have new places to research now, especially now that I know what to ask for, which was really cool. Then they had, then after the break, we were up to class number 4 for the day, and I could have watched Write and Format Your Genealogy in a research paper, and I was like, yeah, but they also have Discovering England Resources in County. And the cool part is that in about 1 to 2 weeks, they're going to send us an email that's going to have links, so we can go in and watch the replays of the classes we attend and the classes we didn't attend. So I was just like, I'm going to watch the video of Writing and Formatting. I'm going to go and watch the live of Discovering England Resources in County Records. And so I learned all about the English system, about how they started keeping records, and how it went from parish to county, and to the Public Records Office, and then onto the National Archives and things like that. So there was this thing, and I said, well, I have this questions. Yes, I've got this roadblock looking for my 4th great grandfather. He was mentioned here, he was mentioned there, and he was mentioned there, and can't find anything about him. And he has a very common name. So she gave me some hints and tips on some of the things, which sites to go to, and some of the keywords to search for to see if we can find them. I'm like, all right. But then also like, got to take a break, because then I'm back for the last class of the day, and I was like, which one shall I do? But there was actually no competition to attend this class, and this class was unbelievable. The last presentation was unbelievable, and this last class was the one that had, I mean, all of the classes I attended today had some impact on me in some way. This last class took me on an emotional roller coaster ride. It gave me a ton of information. Like, I took more notes in this class than I had in any of the other classes today and in any of the other presentations that they did. And this one was how to do oral history interviews. So it's going to those family members and sitting down with them and asking them questions about their life. And right at the very beginning, I mean, she got me basically right at the beginning because she played this amazing video which she had done, and the soundtrack was her father singing that she had managed to record when she was like 19 years old or something. And then it stopped with him singing, and he was talking about his wife who was married to for 55 years. And she had in the background, and so that was the soundtrack, and in the background she had photographs of her dad and photographs of her parents together, from their wedding all the way through for their 55 years of marriage. And this is one time I was really, really, really happy that they had mandatory cameras off, because I was a blubbering mess, and I'm like, oh hell, I've got to listen to the rest of this. This isn't within the first minute of the class the first minute of the presentation that she's doing this, and I'm just like a blubbering mess. I had tissues all over that, made a good dent in the box of tissues next to me. Let's just put it that way. And that video brought back to me that little 21-second video that I took of Brad and Dharmic back in July of 2016, where Brad was teaching Dharmic to do this, blah, 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 blah. And it's this little private moment between the two of them. They are both completely absorbed in each other, and Dharmic's sitting in his high chair at the table, Brad's sitting in a chair next to him, and they're both facing each other. They're about this far apart, and Brad's doing blah, 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 this, and he's singing this little song he came up with, and the look on Dharmic's face was just one of awe. He was so in awe of his grandfather. And then when Brad finished singing, Dharmic reaches across and is trying to get Brad's lips to go blah, 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 blah. And it's just this little short 21-second video, and I thought, I am so happy. And again, emotional roller coaster that I have this video. And that something that day made me pick up my phone and videotape and record that little interaction. And I felt like an outsider because the two of them were in their own little bubble. And to be present to watch that was awesome. But the fact that I actually got it on video too, I am so happy that it's on video. But we got talking about, so she also, not only did she take us through some of the techniques that you can use when you're doing oral history interviews, because this is what she does. She's a genealogist who helps people record their stories. So she was fascinating to listen to, and she does mainly oral video, no videos. It's mainly just voice recordings. And she was talking about how to capture them. She was talking about different techniques that she uses, the equipment that she uses. So she was going through different equipment that she uses, how she records from the phone, to different microphones that she uses, to recording devices, being like little digital recorders, and why she likes one particular recorder, and then also uses her phone. So she's got backups. She's always have backups. When you go to do an interview, always have backups. So she's not only recording on her phone, but she's recording through lav mics onto a digital recorder. And then she'll go back later on, and it gets transcribed, and they then have the transcription of it as well as the audio to go with it. And like I said, I took more notes in that presentation than I did in any of the other presentations, because there was just such valuable information there on how to do these interviews, some of the questions to ask, and some of the equipment that you use, reasons why we need to tell our story. And, if you've been following me through this whole journey with where they started as Facebook Lives and merged into being these daily podcasts, then you know that I talk over and over and over and over and over and over again about how important it is to tell your story. And this is a genealogist who, that is her job. She goes out there and records. Her business is to go and record oral histories. And it's all about making the person feel comfortable. It's having that time limit on the interview for the day, making sure there's no distractions, making sure they've got some water so they don't get a dry throat, and all of that sort of thing. So there's all these different tips and techniques that she had on how to do oral interviews. And she says, even with your own, just sit there and talk into a microphone. I'm like, I can do that. I can do that. And talking about different ways to transcribe afterwards, and different apps that she uses, different websites that she uses. But yeah, and so at the end, when we're doing the Q&A session, I shared the story that to this day still bugs me, and it'll be one of those things that I didn't think of at the time, but looking back, I wish I had. And we were staying at my mother-in-law's place. We were living in Virginia at the time. We're staying at my mother-in-law's place. So this is prior to 2010 when we moved there, and I'm pretty sure it's prior to Brad getting cancer as well. So we're talking before January of 2008. And we were there for a week. And most of those days, Ginny and I sat there, and she would be on a chair, and we would go, and she had this cabinet. It was a very long, low cabinet, and it was full of photographs. And we're talking full. You couldn't get anything else in this cupboard. And as we're going through the photographs, we're splitting them up into Sauerwein family, Brahms family. Each of the boys got their own pile. Then there was the family photographs, and so some of the photographs we'd set aside she wanted to duplicate so that each of the boys had their own copies. And then there was piles of photographs for each boy. And most of them were on the back. I had an archival safe pencil. I'm writing on the back who was in the photograph, when it was taken, where it was taken. And but what I'm still kicking myself about today is that almost every photograph, she would sit there and go, oh, yes, well, in this photograph, and then she read off the names of the people that were in that photograph and where it was taken, when it was taken, and some of them were about, some of them she was pretty sure of the year because of something in the photograph that told her what year it was. And then she would launch into the story about the people in the photograph, or about how that photograph got taken, mainly it was the people in the photograph. She would just start into story mode. We did not record a single word of it for 5 days. We were sitting there for an hour to 2 hours a day going through these photographs to sort them out for her, and we didn't record one word of it. When we got back to Virginia, I said to Brad, I am so pissed at myself. He goes, what's that? I said, we should have had a recording device, some sort of recording device going through all those. Mind you, at the time, when we were going out there, we did not know we were going to be doing that. It's just something that happened. She just wanted some help going through sorting through her photographs. I said, okay. So I didn't even have a digital recorder at the time, but I will tell you this. I went out, I got myself a digital recorder, and man, every time we were at her place and she started on a story, I would whip out that digital recorder, hit the record button, and sit it on the table. I wasn't missing no stories no more. And it was even once, there was one time we were in her bedroom and she had some records in there, and she's putting stuff out on the bed, and we're sitting there talking and going through these records, and they were birth certificates, birth registrations, marriage registrations, and death registrations from Lithuania, the Ukraine, and Russia, from Brad's father's side of the family. And they didn't come to America until like 1912, I think it was. It was early 1900s that they came. So these certificates were, these copies of these registrations were before that time. And she had done it the old-fashioned way, because when she started doing genealogy research, there were no computers, there was nothing online. It was handwriting letters and sending them off and waiting weeks and months before getting replies. But she managed to get copies of these birth, death, and marriage registrations from the Lithuania, Ukraine, and Russia for Brad's ancestors on his father's side of the family. And so we're super happy to have them. And of course, a lot of them were in the language of the country, but they came with transcripts. Or they had, each one had been transcribed. So I'm not sure if they came over with the transcription or if she managed to find somebody that read the language and was able to transcribe it. So, but yeah, I got that one recorded. So that was pretty cool. I've got to go back through my files and find all these recordings, but I do have them. But that last session on the oral history, we had great sessions today. I learned a lot of great stuff, but that last one had the biggest impact on me today and put me on such an emotional roller coaster. And it was like, yes, somebody else who understands. And then the very last thing she talked about was palliative care and about getting stories of those who are terminally ill or have a chronic basically have a terminal diagnosis. And of course, that got the whole waterwork thing going again, and thinking of, Brad talking about things that he wished he had done and that sort of stuff. And so we got all that. But she said that and she talked about how, she says, always be ready to record because you never know when a story is going to come out. And she said she has a rule that when she walks out of the person's house to her car, the recorder does not get turned off until she's pulling out of the driveway. She says so many times she has been walking out to her car and somebody's come and says, oh, I forgot, I had to tell you the story. And they go into the story and she may have missed some of it because she didn't have the recorder still recording. And so that's how long she would record for. She wouldn't stop when she left the door. She would stop it after she was in the car and driving away. But she was talking about, always be ready to record because you never know when the stories are going to come out, and how she had a client or one of her business partners they'd been at a funeral, and the family all was sitting down afterwards at the wake, and story after story after story after story was coming out, and the person quickly grabbed her phone and just put it on record mode and just sat it there on the table and got all these stories about this person who had passed away. So they were able to have a different form of an oral history. So sometimes it's before they pass, sometimes you get the stories coming out after they passed. But the importance of telling your story, I just sort of like, I can't stress enough how important that is. And so now I'm sort of like, okay, I need to listen to my own advice and start talking with my parents and getting stories out of them. And I've still got aunts and uncles around and getting stories out of them. So there's going to be some Zoom calls coming up at some point in time. But yeah, because we're in different countries, so I'll probably get on Zoom with the family and get these stories out there and just tell the different stories and things. Anyway, I'm out of here. I got a puppy that would love to go for WALK. But it has been a very awesome day today, and I still have 2 days left to go. On our tracks tomorrow, what have I got tomorrow? They've got a DNA track, a records track, and a cultural research track. And one of the records track is moonshine and stills. I'm like, ooh, that sounds kind of cool. And another one is about patterns. If your ancestor was an inventor, finding the pattern records. So yeah, I'm looking at that one going, yeah, we're going to have some conflicts tomorrow with some of the topics because they're on at the same time. So I'm going to have to pick out again, which one do I want to be present live for, and which one will I watch the recording of. But the cool part is that we actually have a syllabus that they've given us, and at the beginning of every class they say, this is such and such a class, and you'll find it in your syllabus on page whatever. And each of the instructors have all said, please contact me. Would love to connect with you. My information is the contact information is in the syllabus. So we have a way to contact the presenters afterwards. And I've got a few I just want to go and talk with and say, hey, let's get together, have a cup of coffee, even if it's a virtual cup of coffee. But anyway, so that's it from us for today. Tell your story. Pick up your phone, hit record, and tell your story. Just start with something simple like that. who are you? Where were you born? Where were you raised? Where did you go to school? What memories do you have of school? What memories do you have of the places that you were raised in? Um, just whatever you can think of. It doesn't have to be in chronological order. You can sort that one out later on. Oh, text messages coming in. Anyway, go have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we will catch you guys back here tomorrow at, let me make sure it's 6 p.m. Pacific time. Have a super fantastic sparkling evening. He konera.